The British monarchy begins long before crowns glittered and parliaments debated. It grew from fractured Anglo-Saxon and Celtic kingdoms, unified under one ruler in the 10th century. Then came 1066, the Norman conquest. William the Conqueror's victory reshaped the island's identity. Castles rose, law and language intertwined, and the idea of royal authority became absolute. Through the following centuries, that authority waxed and waned. Kings signed the Magna Carta, civil wars flared, and the monarchy learned the fine art of balancing power with parliament. By the 18th century, Britain had done more than perfect governance. It had mastered expansion. Its navy ruled the seas, its merchants crisscrossed the globe, and the British Empire stretched from Canada to India and beyond. At its height, a quarter of Earth lay under the crown, sparking the phrase, "the empire on which the sun never sets." But every empire casts a shadow. 2 world wars drained its fortunes and its people's appetite for conquest. Waves of independence reshaped the globe, and the monarchy itself evolved, no longer commanding armies, but commanding attention through ceremony, service, and symbolism. Today, the crown endures not as an instrument of power, but as a living bridge between history and identity. The British monarchy, born of conquest, tempered by democracy, and sustained by tradition, remains one of the world's most recognizable institutions, proof that sometimes authority fades, yet legacy endures.
The French monarchy rose from the embers of the early Middle Ages, when the Carolingians, descendants of Charlemagne, began uniting the tribes and territories of Western Europe. Their successors, the Capetians, turned fragmented feudal lands into one of the first truly centralized states. Century by century, royal authority expanded, and with it grew the idea of France itself, an identity forged around the king. The monarchy reached its dazzling height in the 1600s under Louis XIV, the Sun King. From the opulent palace of Versailles, Louis projected the image of royal perfection. His court set the fashions of Europe, his patronage fueled grand architecture, art, and philosophy, and his reign embodied the creed of absolute power, l'état c'est moi, I am the state. French culture and diplomacy radiated across the continent, defining what it meant to be refined and modern. Yet, beneath that brilliance simmered unrest. Extravagance, war debt, and hunger eroded public faith. By 1789, revolution erupted, ending centuries of monarchy with one sharp stroke of the guillotine. Though royal power returned briefly under later kings and emperors, its divine aura was gone forever. The legacy of France's monarchy is one of paradox. It gave the world both the model of the absolute ruler and the spark of revolution that reshaped political thought across nations. From throne to republic, the story of French kings remains a lesson in how splendor and excess can both build and break a nation.
The Habsburg monarchy, Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Habsburg story begins humbly in the 11th century as a minor Swiss noble family ruling a modest stretch of land along the Rhine. Through canny marriages, alliances, and the occasional well-timed inheritance, the Habsburgs built power not by sword alone, but by the ancient art of diplomacy. Their family motto could well have been, "Let others wage war, you, happy Austria, marry." By the 1500s, the Habsburgs ruled vast territories across Central Europe and beyond, from the snow-capped Alps to the plains of Hungary and the cities of northern Italy. As emperors of the Holy Roman Empire, they presided over a patchwork of peoples, Germans, Czechs, Hungarians, Croats, Poles, and more, knit together by dynastic loyalty rather than nationalism. Vienna glittered as the heart of the empire, a hub where art, music, and science flourished under royal patronage. Mozart performed in their courts. Palaces like Schönbrunn embodied imperial grandeur. But the very diversity that gave the Habsburg domains richness also carried the seeds of division. By the 19th century, rising nationalism pulled at the seams of the empire. The dual monarchy of Austria-Hungary tried to balance competing identities, yet the pressures of modernity and World War I shattered that fragile equilibrium. In 1918, the centuries-old monarchy dissolved, and Europe's map was redrawn overnight. What remained was not an empire, but an enduring cultural legacy. The Habsburg realm left behind cathedrals, music, and a shared Central European identity, a reminder that for hundreds of years, one family's web of alliances shaped half a continent. The Spanish monarchy. Spain's monarchy was born from unity, from the powerful marriage of Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile in the late 15th century. Together, they completed the Reconquista, driving out Moorish rule and launched voyages that would reshape the world. In 1492, their support sent Christopher Columbus across the Atlantic, marking the dawn of the first truly global empire. By the 16th and 17th centuries, Spain stood at its zenith. Under the Habsburg monarchs, gold and silver from the Americas flooded its treasuries, funding majestic palaces, art by Velázquez, and the might of the Spanish Armada. From Europe to Asia, Mexico to the Philippines, Spain's red and gold banner flew over territories where the sun never set. The crown commanded oceans, armies, and a faith that spread to every corner of its empire. Yet power breeds overreach. Endless wars drained the royal coffers, inflation devoured its wealth, and rival powers, England, France, and the Netherlands, challenged its supremacy. In the 19th century, rebellions swept through the colonies, and by the time Napoleon's troops invaded the Iberian Peninsula, Spain's empire had fractured. Still, from those centuries of conquest emerged a legacy both complex and vast. The Spanish language today binds nations across continents, and its culture, art, and Catholic tradition remain deeply rooted globally. The monarchy endures as a constitutional symbol, a reminder that from one royal union rose an empire that forever linked Europe, the Americas, and Asia in a shared turbulent history.
The Russian Empire, Romanov Dynasty. The rise of the Russian Empire began in the forests around Moscow, where the Muscovite princes expanded their lands through conquest and alliance. Gradually, they absorbed the fragmented Rus territories, pushing eastward across endless plains. When Peter the Great came to power in the late 17th century, he set out to drag Russia, sometimes kicking and screaming, into modernity. Peter built a navy, reformed the army, imported Western technology, and in 1721, he proclaimed Russia an empire. The Romanov dynasty transformed vast, frozen frontiers into the largest contiguous empire the world had ever known. Under Catherine the Great and her successors, Russia stretched from the Baltic to the Pacific, embracing dozens of cultures and faiths. The 19th century became its age of both might and contradiction. Grand achievements in literature, art, and science stood alongside serfdom, repression, and bitter inequality. The Tsar ruled by divine right, but beneath the surface, resentment brewed. World War I pushed the empire to its breaking point. Defeat, hunger, and the cries for reform ignited the revolutions of 1917. The centuries-old Romanov line fell, and a new radical power rose from its ashes. Yet the echoes of the empire endure. Russia's modern borders, institutions, and ambitions were all forged in that imperial furnace. The Romanov legacy stands as both a monument to transformation and a warning that absolute power can expand a nation beyond imagination, but eventually beyond endurance.
The Holy Roman Empire. In 962 CE, the German king Otto I knelt before the Pope and rose crowned as emperor, reviving the dream of ancient Rome in a medieval world. Thus began the Holy Roman Empire, a vast and sometimes bewildering federation of duchies, bishoprics, and city-states. Its idea was bold: to unite Christian Europe under a sacred and imperial order. At its height, the empire stretched from the North Sea to the Alps, ruled not as a single land, but as a mosaic held together by faith, diplomacy, and the prestige of the emperor. The Habsburg family would come to dominate its throne, turning Vienna into its glittering heart. Yet real power remained in the hands of German princes, electors, and churchmen, an uneasy balance between unity and independence.
Over the centuries, reformers challenged its spiritual authority and local rulers tested its political reach. The Protestant Reformation split it in two. The 30 Years' War devastated its lands and revealed how fragile the imperial ideal had become. By the time Napoleon's armies shattered the map of Europe in 1806, the old empire could no longer hold. And yet its legacy endured. The Holy Roman Empire left Europe with enduring ideas of law, governance, and shared identity among German peoples. It shaped the way Europe would later imagine federations and unions, a 1,000-year experiment in balancing diversity and power that ended in defeat but inspired the very notion of a united continent.
The Ottoman Empire. From the rugged lands of northwestern Anatolia, a small Turkic tribe rose under Osman I in the late 13th century. What began as a frontier beylik soon expanded with astonishing speed, uniting warriors, faith, and ambition under the crescent banner. In 1453, Sultan Mehmed II achieved what empires before him could not. He captured Constantinople, ending the Byzantine Empire and transforming it into Istanbul, the dazzling capital of a new world power. By the 16th century, the Ottoman Empire stood at its zenith. Under sultans such as Suleiman the Magnificent, its armies and fleets stretched across 3 continents, through the Balkans and the Middle East, across North Africa, and deep into Europe. But empire was more than conquest. Ottoman architects built soaring domes and elaborate mosques. Scholars advanced medicine and astronomy, and merchants bridged east and west along routes of gold, silk, and spice. Power, however, is rarely eternal. Over centuries, military defeats mounted, rival powers encroached, and nationalist movements eroded the empire's foundation. By World War I, the sick man of Europe could no longer stand. In 1922, after 6 centuries, the Ottoman Sultanate was abolished, and the Republic of Turkey emerged from its ashes. Still, the Ottoman legacy runs deep, from the music and cuisine of the Balkans to the call to prayer echoing over Istanbul's skyline. More than an empire, it was a civilization, whose art, law, and faith left an indelible mark on half the world.
The Portuguese monarchy. In the 12th century, amid the long Christian reconquista of the Iberian Peninsula, the small county of Portugal broke free from its powerful neighbors and crowned its first king, Afonso Henriques. From that moment, the Portuguese monarchy stood proudly independent, compact in size but vast in ambition. By the 15th century, its ships began venturing into the unknown. Under Prince Henry the Navigator, Portuguese sailors pioneered maritime exploration, rounding Africa, crossing oceans, and mapping the edges of the world. Soon, Lisbon became the nerve center of global trade. In the 16th century, the monarchy commanded a seaborne empire linking Brazil, India, Angola, and the Spice Islands, a web of ports and colonies where gold, spices, and cultures mingled. But prosperity came at a cost. Wars with rival empires, colonial rebellions, and the devastating Lisbon earthquake of 1755 drained both wealth and morale. When Napoleon's armies invaded, the royal family fled across the Atlantic to Brazil, an extraordinary move that made Rio de Janeiro the temporary capital of a European monarchy. Though Portugal reclaimed independence after Napoleonic rule, its empire slowly crumbled. In 1910, a revolution swept away the monarchy entirely, ushering in a republic. Yet the spirit of Portugal's seafaring kings endures. The Portuguese language now unites communities across 4 continents, and the nation's history of exploration still shapes its identity. From a brave coastal kingdom emerged a global culture, the lasting echo of monarchs who once chased the horizon.
The Kingdom of Prussia. Prussia's story begins on the cold shores of the Baltic, where crusading knights of the Teutonic Order carved out a fortress state in the Middle Ages. Over time, religion gave way to discipline, and those hard northern lands forged a society defined by order, duty, and an almost obsessive sense of efficiency. By the 17th century, the Hohenzollern dynasty had transformed what began as scattered territories into a rising military power.
The true turning point came with Frederick the Great in the 18th century. Philosopher, reformer, and relentless strategist, Frederick turned Prussia into Europe's drill square. He modernized the army, encouraged education, welcomed artists and thinkers, and made Berlin a center of Enlightenment thought, while still commanding iron discipline on the battlefield. Under him, Prussia's influence stretched far beyond its modest size. That precision and pragmatism paved the way for something larger. In 1871, after victories over Austria and France, Prussian leadership unified the German states into a single empire under Kaiser Wilhelm I. For the first time, Germany stood as one, and Prussia's militaristic culture became its backbone. But the same qualities that built an empire also invited disaster. 2 world wars devastated Europe, and in their aftermath, the Allies dissolved Prussia entirely, branding it the engine of aggression. Yet its legacy persists. Modern bureaucracy, education systems, and civil service models across Europe trace their roots to the Prussian ideal of duty and efficiency. Prussia the kingdom is gone, but its discipline still marches through history's corridors.
The Dutch monarchy/republic. In the late 16th century, a small corner of Europe dared to defy the mighty Spanish Empire. The Dutch provinces, driven by trade, faith, and fierce independence, rose in revolt under leaders like William of Orange. Their rebellion birthed the Dutch Republic, a rare democracy in an age of kings, and a force that would soon outshine its former master. The 17th century became the Dutch Golden Age. From the shipyards of Amsterdam to the ports of Batavia, Dutch merchants knitted together a global network of commerce. The East India Company and the West India Company transformed the world's trade, while new financial institutions, stock markets, banks, and insurance, laid the foundations for modern capitalism. With wealth came art and innovation. Painters like Rembrandt and Vermeer captured the glow of ordinary life, and scientists charted the unknown. Yet the winds of fortune shift quickly on restless seas. Naval wars and economic rivalry with Britain and France gradually weakened Dutch dominance. By the 18th century, imperial competition and colonial losses dimmed the Republic's star. In 1815, after the Napoleonic Wars, the Netherlands re-emerged as a constitutional monarchy, more modest in reach but still fiercely proud. Today, the Dutch royal family presides over one of the world's most open and prosperous societies. The legacy of the old republic lives on in global finance, free thought, and the enduring image of a small nation that once ruled the seas and taught the world that commerce, not conquest, could shape an empire's destiny.
The Swedish Empire. Sweden's rise to empire began after the collapse of the Kalmar Union, when the Scandinavian kingdoms split apart in the early 1500s. Freed from Danish rule, Sweden slowly forged its own path, a northern nation of thick forests, hardy soldiers, and pragmatic monarchs. By the early 17th century, one king would catapult it onto the world stage: Gustavus Adolphus, the Lion of the North. Gustavus turned Sweden into a modern war machine. His revolutionary tactics and powerful army dominated the Baltic Sea and reshaped the art of battle during the 30 Years' War. Under his successors, Sweden expanded across Finland, Estonia, Latvia, and even parts of Germany. For a brief, glittering era, Stockholm ruled a maritime empire where trade, science, and governance thrived side by side with battlefield glory. But maintaining supremacy over harsh northern lands and restless neighbors was never easy. The Great Northern War, waged from 1700 to 1721 against a coalition led by Russia, shattered Swedish ambition. By its end, Sweden lost territory, treasure, and the mantle of regional power. A young Russia under Peter the Great claimed the crown of the Baltic. In the centuries that followed, Sweden transformed itself instead through reform, not conquest. The old imperial discipline gave way to pioneering democracy, education, and welfare systems that became models for the modern world. The Swedish Empire may have faded, but its spirit of innovation and balance continues to define the resilient, forward-thinking nation it left behind.
The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. In the late Middle Ages, two great powers of Eastern Europe, the Kingdom of Poland and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, chose unity over rivalry. Their dynastic bond began with the Union of Krzewo in 1385 and deepened with the Union of Lublin in 1569, forming the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. It became one of Europe's largest and most unusual states, an elective monarchy where kings were chosen by the nobility, and power rested not on divine right, but on consensus. Its golden age came in the 16th century. Stretching from the Baltic to the Black Sea, the Commonwealth fostered religious tolerance rare for its time, welcoming Catholics, Orthodox Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike. Polish and Lithuanian nobles debated policy in grand assemblies, while universities and cities thrived. It was a republic under a crown, a daring political experiment centuries ahead of its era. But this delicate balance was also its weakness. The liberum veto let any noble halt legislation with a single objection, paralyzing government reform. As absolutist monarchies strengthened around it, internal division left the Commonwealth vulnerable. By the late 18th century, neighboring powers, Russia, Prussia, and Austria, carved its lands into pieces in three brutal partitions. By 1795, the Commonwealth vanished from the map. Yet its ideals did not. The memory of shared governance and freedom of conscience inspired future generations of Poles, Lithuanians, and others to fight for liberty across Europe. The state itself died, but its legacy, the dream of a just, cooperative nation, continued to pulse beneath the region's history for centuries to come.
The Danish monarchy. The Danish crown traces its roots to the Viking Age, when seafaring chieftains united the clans of Jutland and the surrounding islands under one ruler. Fierce, ambitious, and master sailors, these early kings carried Norse power across the North Sea, shaping the destinies of England, Greenland, and beyond. By the Middle Ages, that restless energy had crystallized into a kingdom with a firm royal identity, the Kingdom of Denmark. In the late 14th century, Queen Margaret I achieved what few rulers could. She brought Denmark, Norway, and Sweden together under a single crown in the Kalmar Union, a Scandinavian alliance that made the North a formidable political bloc. Though the union later fractured, Denmark endured as the region's most stable and influential power. Its merchants and explorers later joined the global race for trade, building outposts in Africa, the Americas, and the Indies. But history rarely spares empires from ebb and flow. Denmark lost Sweden's allegiance in the 1500s and ceded Norway in the 1800s after the Napoleonic Wars. Yet rather than collapse, the monarchy adapted. In 1849, King Frederick VII signed a constitution, transforming absolute rule into a parliamentary democracy, one of Europe's first. Today, Denmark's monarch reigns over one of the oldest unbroken royal lines in the world, a symbol less of conquest and more of continuity. From Viking longships to modern social welfare, the Danish crown reflects a unique journey, proof that strength can endure not only through power, but through the wisdom to change with the times.
The Kingdom of Norway royal story begins among the fjords and longships of the Viking Age. Around the year 872, a warrior chieftain named Harald Fairhair unified warring clans into a single realm, forging the foundation of the Norwegian kingdom. Over the next centuries, Norway's seafaring spirit propelled it far beyond its rugged shores. Viking explorers and traders reached Iceland, Greenland, and even North America, centuries before Columbus, carrying with them the proud independence of their homeland. For a time, Norway stood tall among the northern powers, but its size and population made it vulnerable to larger neighbors. After the late Middle Ages, it entered a long political union with Denmark, forming Denmark-Norway, where Copenhagen often claimed the louder voice. The old Viking crown seemed subdued but never extinguished. When the Napoleonic Wars reshaped Europe, Norway passed from Danish hands to a new union with Sweden, a partnership uneasy and unequal. The call for self-rule grew steadily, and in 1905, Norway peacefully dissolved its union with Sweden, declaring full independence. In a testament to democratic modernity, Norwegians chose a foreign prince, Haakon VII, to become their king, symbolizing both renewal and continuity. Today, Norway's monarchy is among the most egalitarian in the world, a ceremonial institution proud of its ancient roots, yet deeply woven into a modern, progressive society. From Harald Fairhair's sword to Haakon VII's oath, Norway's crown tells a thousand-year story of exploration, endurance, and the quiet strength of a nation that learned to marry heritage with humility.
The Kingdom of Hungary's monarchy began at the dawn of the second millennium, when the Magyar tribes of the Carpathian Basin exchanged the life of steppe warriors for settled rule. In the year 1000 CE, their leader, Stephen I, received a crown from the Pope, marking both his coronation and Hungary's Christianization. That sacred moment bound the kingdom to Western Europe, even as its culture retained the proud distinctiveness of its Eastern roots. Medieval Hungary quickly became a crossroads between worlds, a realm where Latin Christendom, Slavic lands, and the Ottoman frontier met. Its fertile plains and strategic rivers brought prosperity, attracting migrants, scholars, and merchants. For centuries, Hungarian kings stood as guardians of Europe's frontier, their fortresses resisting waves of invasion from east and south. But the 16th century brought catastrophe. The Ottoman Empire swept north, crushing Hungary's forces at Mohács and occupying its heartland for 150 years. The Habsburgs ruled the rest, turning Hungary into both bulwark and bridge within their vast empire. After the long wars of liberation, Hungarians regained autonomy, only to see their monarchy reformed as part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, a dual crown that endured until the collapse of World War I. Yet, even stripped of empire, Hungary never lost its identity. From medieval cathedrals to composers like Liszt and poets like Petőfi, its culture radiated resilience. Today, the Hungarian crown stands as a symbol of endurance, a reminder that though kingdoms may crumble, nations built on faith, language, and memory can outlast centuries of conquest and change.